All right, Sister Sunshine, how are you? This is Symbolic. I'm responding to your video called "Where Are All the Monkey Babies?" Horrifying thought. I mean, human monkey babies, that would be kind of a horrifying thought. Um, but it's a great way to sum up a question, you know. It's a nice, simple question, right? I think the answer is real complex, though. I should start off, I think, by saying that, you know, science, and you've heard this before, science is a series of models that we build. You know, we build models to try to explain the universe and try to predict its behavior. It's not supposed to be something people, you know, quote unquote, believe with certainty. In fact, built into science is the assumption that, you know, the model will be improved on, or an entirely new model will arise that will replace the old one, because the new model will better explain the universe or better predict the universe. Hopefully both. So you have, you know, Newton's theory of gravity, the Newtonian theory or the Newtonian model of how the universe works, later being supplanted by the Einsteinian model, which explains more phenomenon, and in which actually you find that the Newtonian model is simply a single instance, you know, of the Einsteinian model. It embraces it. So all of science is made up out of models, and it's assumed that, you know, you accept something as provisionally true operationally, and, you know, hopefully something will improve later on. So it's an open system in that regard. Also a bit about randomness. You know, randomness is not really a force, a true force in nature, like gravity is, or water pressure, or, you know, what have you, heat. Randomness really is a measure of our ignorance. When we don't know what the probability of something is, and something has no pattern, we call it random. So if you look at, say, take the number pi, 3.14156, on and on and on and on. No one has ever found a pattern in those digits beyond the decimal. There's no way to generate them, there's no pattern there. So we call it random, because no matter how many numbers you look at, there's no way to tell what the next number will be. And when we really know nothing, we give everything we assign everything an equal probability. So this is the idea of randomness. Randomness isn't really a force of nature. Everything that happens because of real forces, because of gravity or some interplay of forces. If I, you know, strike the desk, it's the force of my hand. Whatever change that causes, it's due to a real force in nature. Now, if I know nothing about it, I didn't know anybody was here, and I'm wondering, well, why does the desk have this dent in it? Then I'm forced to say, oh gosh, I don't know, what's the probability? Maybe everything's equally probable, etc. But in any event, randomness is not a force of nature. To go into the pressures of nature, you know, different environmental changes cause different, you know, let's call them pressures. It makes it more difficult to survive, creatures to survive, depending on the change in their environment. It's not that this change in the environment is a physical pressure that causes that molds life. You could look at it that way. It's kind of a beautiful, poetic way to look at it. But it's not that it's a pressure like that causes evolution. What happens is the change is so abrupt that any genes that do not favor any creatures who don't have the genes that favor survival are going to die out. So you're going to suddenly filter out the genes that can survive from the genes that can't. Let's say you have a gene that favors survival in a certain environment. Let's take a giraffe. You know, there's a giraffe. You know, one of them has a gene that gives it a slightly higher neck, and that's just one gene. As long as nothing is changing, that gene is just going to be one gene that maybe is passed on to children. There's nothing there. You know, there are going to be giraffes with different sized necks. But as soon as all the vegetation dies out, all the low-lying vegetation dies out because of some climactic change, then suddenly those genes become critical towards survival, because those are the only animals that, you know, have the necks a little higher, that can reach the existing or remaining vegetation. So suddenly the other animals start to die off, and the more of them that die off, the more long-necked creatures are going to be there. They're going to become the major gene pool. They're going to interbreed, and you're going to have more and more creatures with the long neck. I hope I explained that right. I just woke up too, so I apologize if I'm not explaining this clearly. So basically, it all comes down to numbers, just numbers, you know. And if you have too radical a change, too extreme a change in the environment, everything will die off. So, you know, you made the point that evolutionists, though there really shouldn't be any evolutionists, because one should not believe in the sense that one believes religiously in evolution. You make the comment that evolutionists should have nothing to fear, because we'll just simply mutate out of any climactic change, like you know, I think the example you gave was global warming. It's not true. There's no guarantee that we will. There's no guarantee that we will evolve. There has to be a gene present that gives some sort of advantage. If that gene's not present, then it's just not going to happen. Is the gene present? We don't know. It may never occur. A lot of changes have to do with just large numbers. You know, if you have billions and billions and billions of something, the chances are that, you know, you're going to have one that has an advantage. You know, now what caused it? Not randomness. Real forces cause things. It's just that when you have a larger number, it's more likely than not that you're going to have that key change, that key gene. You'd mentioned the planets. You know, how did this? You know, one thing in what you mention, in what you talk a lot about decisions being made, like something in the soup decides that it's going to crawl out of the soup. Well, decisions aren't made. You know, creatures aren't making these decisions. You know, opportunities for survival open up, and the creatures flow towards that opportunity. I guess that's another poetic image, but it's not that a salamander decides it's going to crawl out of a lake, or creatures don't decide that they're going to evolve. You know. They have the inbuilt capacity, conditions change, and then they're just better able to survive. So things aren't making the decision. The sun didn't decide to condense. The universe didn't decide to expand. You know, these things just happen. You were talking about the Big Bang Theory. No one knows why. You know, science doesn't answer why; it just answers how. And apparently the evidence, or the observation and evidence, or many kinds of evidence that they have now, seems to indicate and support an idea of the Big Bang, which is the universe starting at a particular moment in time, though built into that is the concept that time itself would start. Actually, I think it's very consistent with creationism. You know, how did it get there? Why did it happen? No one knows that. Science can't answer why. Science can answer the mechanisms of how, but it can't answer why questions. Science can't. That's for philosophy and religion, the why questions. So why did it just happen to be that the Earth is where it is and the Moon is where it is? No one knows why. But the fact is that there are, for all we know, there are billions of planets. You know, billions and billions or trillions. Who knows how large the universe is? So they have some approximation of the size of the physical universe. So the fact is, there are so many combinations that one is likely to have occurred. You know, if it does occur, then whatever creature evolves on that planet is going to say, "Gee, why me? You know, well, how did this happen here? Why did it happen here?" If there were only one planet in the entire universe, the probability would be much lower. But as soon as you increase the numbers to billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of combinations, you know, you're going to find one where life can be supported. I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to have to make you 2 videos, and I apologize that I'm kind of wandering a bit. Yeah, let me make a second video. Okay, sister, be right back.